Chapter 4. I'll be your wingman. The golden-scaled dragon soared higher, wings cutting through the thinning air like blades of sunlight. Each beat of its massive wings sent ripples of gold cascading across the clouds below, scattering them into radiant wisps. The world beneath was a patchwork of silver and blue, fading into a haze as they climbed. The dragon's scales caught the light of the distant sun, refracting it into 1,000 hues, amber, ivory, and molten gold, until it seemed less a creature of flesh and more a living star ascending toward the heavens. Archmage Thalen Durei stood near the dragon's neck, his robes whipping violently in the high winds. Around him shimmered the barrier he had conjured, a sphere of blue and gold light that pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of a celestial being. Within it, the air remained warm and breathable, a sanctuary against the freezing void beyond. Each gust of wind struck the barrier and broke into a shower of sparks, scattering like tiny constellations before fading into the vastness. The mage's staff glowed faintly, threads of azure magic weaving through the air, binding him to the dragon's essence. Upon each finger, on each hand, gleamed rings of power, each a relic of immense energy. Their gemstones pulsed lighty, one feeding him a steady stream of mana drawn from stored reserves. The energy coursed through his veins like liquid fire, sustaining both his body and the barrier that protected them. Yet even with these artifacts, the strain was immense. He could feel the constant draining in every breath, every tremor of his fingers. The rings would keep him alive. Yes, but only barely. Enough to shield himself and the prince, nothing more. He was deeply grateful that Alarion lay in stasis, untouched by the exhaustion and cold that gnawed at him. Behind them, Prince Alarion rested, his body encased in a spell of suspended time. No cocoon surrounded him, only a faint shimmer of light that rippled across his form like heat over glass. The magic preserved him perfectly. His chest neither rose nor fell, his expression serene, his hair unmoved by the wind. The stasis held him beyond hunger, beyond pain, beyond the reach of the mortal world. Thalen's eyes lingered on the prince for a moment, and a flicker of relief crossed his face. Were it not for that spell, he could not have borne the burden of keeping them both alive. As they ascended into the upper reaches of the sky, the world around them transformed. The air grew thin, and the blue of the heavens deepened into indigo, then into the black velvet of near space. Stars began to pierce through the opening daylight, sharp and brilliant, their light unfiltered by the atmosphere. The curve of the world became visible below, a breathtaking sweep of azure oceans and silver clouds. It was as if they had left the mortal realm behind and entered the threshold of eternity. The mage felt the strain of the altitude pressing against his barrier. The winds howled like spirits, and frost began to form on the outer edges of the magical dome. He tightened his grip on his staff, murmuring words of power that shimmered in the air like ribbons of light. The dragon's wings slowed, each movement deliberate, conserving strength as the air grew too thin for sound to travel easily. Communication became a challenge. Words were swallowed by the void before they could reach another's ear. Still they climbed, and the stars grew brighter, closer, no longer distant points of light but silent watchers in the void. The horizon curved sharply beneath them, and the faint pull of gravity seemed to loosen its hold. The dragon's mighty wings moved in near silence now, gliding through the thinning veil of atmosphere as though swimming through liquid night. The mage could feel the subtle shift, the weight of the world falling away, the whisper of the cosmos calling to them. For the briefest moment, It felt as though one more beat of those golden wings might carry them beyond the sky itself, into the endless sea of stars. Thalen turned his gaze toward the dragon's great head, his lips barely moving. The wind tore at his robes, and his voice was nearly swallowed by the thin air. "We'll lose our voices soon," he said loudly. Then he hesitated, his hand hovering mid-air as he considered the spell forming in his mind. It was a grave thing to cast magic upon a dragon without consent. Among the elder races, dragons were not merely beings of power. They were ancient wills, sovereign and proud. To touch their mind uninvited was an affront few would forgive. Thalen bowed his head slightly, the gesture small but sincere. "May I link our minds, Great One? The spell is harmless, but it touches the soul. I would not trespass without your leave." The dragon's golden eyes turned toward him, vast and knowing. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold still. Then, with a low rumble that vibrated through the air and into Thalen's bones, the dragon inclined its head in silent assent. Thalen inclined his own in return, a quiet exchange of respect between this ancient power. With a flick of his fingers, he traced a sigil of thought through the air, a spell of mind-linking, ancient and delicate. A thin thread of blue light extended from his brow to the dragon's, vanishing as it connected. The world fell utterly silent, yet a moment later, a voice echoed in his mind, deep, resonant, and warm as the heart of a forge. "You seek to speak without sound," the dragon's thought rumbled, its tone carrying both curiosity and respect. "Another spell. Always another spell. You seem to have one for every need, every danger, every breath of the unknown. Tell me, Archmage, how does one mortal mind hold so many?" Thalen smiled faintly, his thoughts forming words that needed no breath. "Necessity, or perhaps stubborn ingenuity," he replied, his mental voice tinged with quiet amusement. "The spell demanded immense focus. One had to sharpen a thought until it rang like a bell in the mind of another. Ordinary thoughts drifted unheard, but with enough will, a single idea could become a voice that crossed the silence between souls. I was always reading and learning," he continued, his tone thoughtful. "I've always been different from others. My affinity lies with air, water, and fire. Because of that, I can channel lightning and raw energy more easily than most. My parents recognized my potential early on. They were powerful mages themselves. I was fortunate to be born into such a family." He paused briefly, recalling the scent of parchment and candlelight, the echo of distant halls. "They sent me to the Valamir Arcanum when I was still a child. After graduating, I spent 2 years in fellowship at the Grand Academy in the Kingdom of Alarion. There, I studied under a great master of the primal convergence. He taught me to weave the elements together, to find balance in chaos, to embrace chaos and create my own potential without fear." The dragon's eyes glimmered with a flicker of remembrance. "Ah, yes," it thought aloud, its mental tone softening. "The Valamir Arcanum. I know that place well. Its towers once gleamed like crystal under the morning sun. Many of your kind have sought the secrets of the skies there." The dragon's gaze lingered on him for a long moment, and when it spoke again, its voice carried a deeper warmth. "You honor me with your courtesy, Archmage Thalen Durei, and you honor my prince with your vigilance. He chose well when he placed his life in your hands." Thalen's brow furrowed slightly. "Chose well?" "Indeed," the dragon replied, the thought rolling through Thalen's mind like distant thunder. "The prince spoke of you long before this journey began. He has watched your path for years, Not merely your mastery of the arcane, but the heart that guides it. He told me of your days as an adventurer, when you wandered the Empire's edges, saving those who could not save themselves. Villages spared from bandits, caravans rescued from storms, lives preserved without reward or recognition. He said you never sought glory, only good. Those 2 years in fellowship were 2 years in the Adventurers Guild also. Thalen's thoughts faltered, surprise flickering through the link. He knew of that? Those were years, I thought, long buried beneath duty and title. He knew, the dragon said gently. He told me he had his eye on you even then. When the Golden Conclave called your name, he was not surprised. He said you were a man who would protect him, not because of command, but because it was right. That is why he chose you, not for your power, but for your heart. The Archmage was silent for a long moment. The air around him shimmered faintly with the quiet pulse of emotion he could not hide. I never knew he held me in such regard, he thought at last. I believed my appointment was political, a matter of convenience. No, the dragon's voice softened, almost tender. It was personal. The prince's gratitude runs deeper than words. Even now, as he sleeps behind my scales, I can feel his trust in you. It burns like a steady flame, unshaken by fear or shadow. Thalen lowered his head, the faint shimmer of emotion flickering in his eyes. The cold wind outside the barrier could not touch him, yet the warmth of the dragon's words pierced deeper than any flame. Then I will not fail him, he thought quietly. Not now. Not ever. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter, the light within them like twin suns breaking through cloud. I believe you, Archmage, and so does he. For a dragon, you are incredibly weak. For a human, you have nothing but opportunities and growth. You are a mage that humans should fear. For a long while, neither spoke again. They simply soared, mage, dragon, and sleeping prince, through the thinning air and into the quiet majesty of the stars. Then, after a time, the dragon's voice returned, softer now, almost amused. You know, Thalen, I always look forward to our talks at night, when the others sleep and the world below fades into mist. You speak to me as an equal, not as a beast to be commanded, but as a friend. It is refreshing. Thalen's lips curved faintly. I value them as well. You have more wisdom in your silence than most courts have in their councils. A deep, rumbling laugh echoed through the link, shaking the air around them. Ha! If only the Night Almond could hear you say that. The poor man can barely look at me without trembling. I swear, if I so much as blink in his direction, he nearly drops his golden staff. He only greets me with the word dragon, and looks like he wants to whack me with his staff. Thalen chuckled quietly. The sound carried through thought alone. He's young. He'll learn in time that your teeth are not meant for him. Perhaps, the dragon mused, amusement still coloring its tone. But it is good to be feared sometimes, keeps them respectful. Still, its voice softened again. I prefer your company, Archmage. You speak without fear, without pretense. It is a rare gift among your kind. Thalen inclined his head, his expression thoughtful. And you, Great One, remind me that even power can be gentle, that wisdom need not roar to be heard. The dragon's laughter faded into a low, contented hum, like distant thunder rolling across the heavens. Then we understand one another well. For a time they flew in silence once more, the stars wheeling above them like ancient sentinels. The rhythmic beat of the dragon's wings was steady, almost meditative, and Thalen found himself watching the shimmer of gold that rippled across the creature's scales in the sunlight. Curiosity stirred within him, not from suspicion, but from genuine wonder. "May I ask you something, Great One?" Thalen's voice came softly through the link, respectful yet edged with quiet inquiry. "You speak of the prince with such devotion. I have seen knights swear oaths, priests pledge their souls, and mages bind their lives to causes. But your loyalty runs deeper than any vow I know. Why? Why him?" The dragon did not answer at once. The silence stretched, vast and ancient, like the pause between heartbeats of the world itself. When it finally spoke, its voice was low and heavy, not with anger, but with memory. "You ask a question few have dared, Archmage, and you deserve the truth. In my 1500 years, I have seen the rise and fall of men, the birth and death of gods in the hearts of men. Once dragons were many. The skies burned with our kind, crimson, azure, and silver wings spanning the horizon. But time is cruel. We are not born wise, Thalen. When we hatch, we are primal, creatures of hunger, instinct, and fire. Intelligence comes only with age, and few of us now live long enough to earn it." The dragon's eyes dimmed slightly, the golden light within them flickering like a dying ember. In my youth, I was no different. I was wild, proud, and foolish. I fought for causes I did not understand, for mortals who whispered lies sweet as honey. In my arrogance, I believed I was defending friends, a group that praised me as their guardian. But they were not friends. They were deceivers, and I was their weapon. A low rumble passed through his chest, not of anger, but of sorrow. When the truth came, it came in flame and blood. I found myself facing the Golden Conclave, our own order, in a battle I had no right to fight. I slew many before I realized the truth, and by then, it was too late. They brought me down hard, and dragged me to the capital's grand square. My wings broken, my scales blackened by fire. I lay in chains before thousands, a monster to be judged. Thalen listened in silence, feeling the weight of centuries in every word. And then the dragon continued. He came. The memory seemed to warm the dragon's voice, softening the edges of his sorrow. A boy, no more than 5 summers old, slipped past the guards and the terrified courtiers. The emperor and his queen screamed for him to stop, but he did not. He walked straight to me without fear. I remember his eyes bright, unyielding, filled with something I had never seen before: compassion. Thalen's breath caught as the dragon's thoughts deepened, the images forming vividly in his mind. He reached out a tiny hand and touched my nose. My scales were crimson and black then, the colors of rage and ruin. His hand never trembled, not from fear or anxiety. And then he smiled and said, "You would look better in gold." The dragon's voice trembled, a deep resonance of emotion that even the air could feel. At that moment, something stirred within me, something ancient, something divine. Through that child's touch, I felt the power of Valoria herself, the light that binds all life. My scales burned, but not with pain. They turned to gold, radiant and pure. It was quite a sight to see my redemption. I heard a song was made about it. My scales exploded with great power, and the chains melted off my scales. The darkness that had consumed me was lifted, replaced by purpose. Even at my absolute lowest, that boy saw power and absolute potential. The boy had given me redemption, and in return, I gave him my vow. A long silence followed, broken only by the whisper of the wind. From that day forth, the dragon said softly, "I swore that as long as I draw breath, I will protect him, not as a servant, but as a father guards his son. He gave me back my soul, Archmage, my power, my purpose, my will to live. I owe him everything." Thalen's throat tightened, though no sound escaped his lips. He looked upon the dragon, no longer as a creature of legend, but as something far greater, a being who had known sin, sorrow, and salvation. Then it seems, Thalen thought quietly, that the prince has saved more lives than he knows, even one as ancient as yours. The dragon's eyes gleamed with quiet warmth. "Aye," it murmured, "and perhaps, one day, he will save the world itself." The wind grew thinner, sharper, until each breath Thalen drew felt like inhaling starlight. The world below had vanished into a sea of silver mist, and only the endless dark of the heavens stretched above them. The dragon's wings beat slower now, each motion deliberate, powerful, not of exhaustion, but of precision. Thalen observed a sudden feeling of weightlessness. His feet began to lift ever so slightly as he hung to his staff, hovering and linked by his magic to the dragon. "We have reached it." The dragon's voice came through the link, deep and calm. "The perfect height." Thalen blinked, steadying himself against the ridge of the dragon's neck. "Perfect height." "Aye," the dragon rumbled, a note of exhilaration threading through his tone. "The place where gravity begins to falter, and the air itself forgets which way is down. Hold fast, Archmage. Crouch low and cling to me. What comes next is not flight. It is something far greater." Thalen obeyed without hesitation, clasping onto the dragon, lowering himself until his body pressed close against the dragon's gleaming scales. The air around them began to hum, not with wind, but with energy. The golden light that had always shimmered faintly across the dragon's body now flared, brightening until it was almost blinding. "Now," the dragon whispered, his voice trembling with both awe and anticipation, "we glide with the power of Valoria." The world exploded into brilliance. "I am speed made flesh!" screamed the dragon with pure joy and excitement. "It has been almost 30 years since I have experienced this joy." His voice thundered with glee into the mind link. A thunderous crack split the silence of the upper sky as the dragon's wings unfurled, vast and radiant, each scale blazing like molten sunlight. The air rippled and bent around them, and for a moment, Thalen felt weightless, as though the very laws of the world had been suspended. Then, with a roar that shook the heavens, the dragon dove. The force was unimaginable. The wind screamed past them in torrents of gold and white, and Thalen could feel the magic thrumming through every vein of the dragon's body, pure, divine, unstoppable. He pressed himself as close as he could, his cloak snapping like a banner in a storm. Below them, the clouds tore apart in their wake, leaving trails of light that shimmered like rivers of fire. From the earth, any who looked up would have seen a miracle, a blazing sphere of gold and flame streaking across the night sky, brighter than any star. Some would have sworn it was a comet, others a god descending to the world below. The heavens themselves seemed to tremble as the dragon's speed grew beyond comprehension. Thunder rolled in their wake, not from storm or cloud, but from the sheer force of their passage. Thalen thought he heard the sky itself cracking, the sound of creation straining to contain them. His heart pounded, his eyes wide with awe. This is how dragons travel, He heard Pyraxis scream into his mind. By the stars! I did not think such speed possible, Thalen thought, barely able to form the words. The dragon's laughter boomed through his mind, wild and joyous. Holy cow, he thundered, his voice filled with astonishment and delight. I didn't know I could achieve such speed. It must be the power of Valoria within me. Her light burns brighter than I ever imagined. The golden fire that surrounded them pulsed brighter still, wrapping them in a cocoon of brilliance as they cut through the thin veil between heaven and earth. The air trembled, the stars blurred, and the world below became a distant dream. At last, the dragon leveled his wings, the furious descent easing into a smooth, gliding arc. The light around him softened, fading from blinding gold to a warm, steady glow that bathed them both in serenity. Thalen slowly lifted his head, his hair whipped by the lingering wind, his eyes wide with wonder. That was beyond magic, he whispered through the link. The dragon's chest rumbled with quiet pride. It was not magic, Archmage. It was faith, the gift of Valoria herself. And perhaps a touch of joy. As the golden glow around them softened, Thalen lifted his head, the wind tugging gently at his robes. The stars still shimmered above, but the horizon ahead had begun to pale, the first faint hint of dawn brushing the edge of the world. They were gliding now, smooth and effortless, the dragon's wings barely moving as if the air itself carried them forward. After a long silence, Thalen spoke through the link, his curiosity returning. Tell me, Great One, how do you know where to fly? Up here, there are no roads, no landmarks, no stars bright enough to guide through the clouds. Yet you never hesitate. A deep, contented rumble echoed through the dragon's chest, vibrating beneath Thalen's hands. Ah, the dragon replied, his tone warm with quiet pride. That is the gift of my kind. The memory of dragons is not like that of men. It is built upon time itself, layer upon layer, century upon century. Every flight, every current of air, every mountain peak and coastline I have ever seen is etched into me. We do not forget the shape of the world, Archmage. It becomes part of us. Thalen's brow furrowed in fascination. So your sense of direction is instinctive? More than instinct, the dragon answered. It is inheritance. Even newly hatched wormlings, wild and primal as they are, can find their way home through storms and darkness. It is as if the earth whispers to us, and the sky answers. No dragon has ever been lost, not truly. We are creatures of the wind. The world itself is our map. Thalen smiled faintly at that, his respect deepening. Then I am in the safest hands the heavens could offer. The dragon's laughter rolled like distant thunder. Aye, that you are. As they descended slightly, the clouds parted, revealing a vast expanse of sky teeming with motion. Dozens of airships drifted below them, some large and lumbering, others sleek and swift, their hulls gleaming in the dawnlight. Sails of silver and crimson caught the wind, and the faint hum of arcane engines reached even this height. Thalen narrowed his eyes, studying the scene. There are so many. I did not expect the skies to be so crowded. Why are the airships flying over these lands? The dragon's gaze swept the horizon, his golden eyes narrowing slightly. Not all are of Valoria, he said. Some are merchant vessels carrying supplies between the border cities. Others belong to the nobles of Mirvale, that proud land across the eastern sea. They have long mastered the art of skycraft, crafting vessels that glide almost as gracefully as I do. There was a faint edge to his tone, a rumble of disapproval beneath the words. It is why the prince insists Valoria must strengthen her skies. Too long have foreign powers ruled the air unchallenged. The nobles of Mirvale flaunt their ships above our borders, pretending it is trade. But we both know what it truly is: a display. A reminder that they believe Valoria's reach ends at the clouds. Thalen's eyes darkened with thought. Then the prince's bond with you. It is more than companionship. It is strategy. Indeed, the dragon replied, his voice low but proud. When the world sees that Valoria's heir rides a dragon, a creature of the old age reborn in gold, they will think twice before testing our skies. The prince understands what few rulers do. The air is the new battlefield, and those who do not command it will one day kneel beneath those who do. They glided silently for a while, passing above the airships like a golden phantom. Below, crews looked up in awe, pointing toward the blazing figure that streaked across the heavens. Some ships dipped their sails in salute. Others simply drifted aside, unwilling to challenge the dragon's path. Thalen watched them fade into the distance, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then perhaps, he murmured, the age of dragons and the age of airships are not so different after all. The dragon's eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. Perhaps not, but I know this. So long as I draw breath, the skies of Valoria will never belong to another. And with that, he angled his wings slightly, catching a rising current of wind. The wind screamed around them like a living storm. The dragon's wings cut through the clouds in blinding arcs of gold, the sunlight flashing off his scales. Thalen leaned forward, his cloak whipping violently behind him. The air felt alive, charged with power that hummed in his bones. Then the dragon's deep voice rumbled through the link. We might have a little problem. We're almost there. Thalen blinked. Almost there? He squinted through the glare. That's impossible. The capital should still be hours away. I thought you said we'd arrive by nightfall. So did I, the dragon said, his tone uneasy. But look below. Through the haze, the capital city of Solenor sprawled across the horizon. Towers, domes, and marble bridges glinting in the morning light. Thalen's jaw tightened. We've crossed half the kingdom in less than 3 hours. Aye, the dragon replied, his voice low and troubled. It must be the new power within me, the gift that awoke when the prince and I forged our bond. It burns hotter than any fire I've ever known. The air bends around us. The wind itself obeys me. But it's too strong. I can't control it fully. Small problem, thought Thalen. Small problem, he yelled through his mind. We are going triple the speed I thought possible, thought the dragon. It might have only been 2 hours of travel time. We're going too fast. Thalen's pulse quickened. Then slow us down before... I'm trying, the dragon snapped. We're moving faster than the wind itself. If I descend too sharply, my wings will tear apart. The city loomed closer, the palace towers rising like ivory spears. I'll try to circle the city, the dragon said quickly. If I can bleed off speed, we might still land safely. He banked hard, wings flaring wide. The air screamed around them, the force pressing Thalen flat against his back. With even the smallest turn, the dragon almost lost control. Okay, bad idea, it shared through the mind link. Easy, Thalen shouted as he held on to dear life. You're still too fast. Oh, crap, the dragon growled, panic creeping into his voice. If I slow down anymore, my wings will tear clean off. Then what do we— Hold on! The dragon flared his wings again, desperate to break. The majestic creature that had soared like a god now flailed wildly, wobbling through the sky like a massive golden chicken. Wings beating unevenly, tail thrashing, scales flashing in the sun. By the stars! Thalen yelled, gripping tighter. Totem of greater protection, he thought in his mind. He screamed the words in magic Aegis Magnifica as blue and golden light quickly enveloped the group. Pyraxis started to give warning. We're going to— The rest was lost in the thunder of impact directly into the palace features. The morning light over Valoria's imperial palace was serene until the sky ignited. On the outer terrace, Captain Darren Holtz quinted upward, his crimson cloak snapping in the breeze. Beside him stood Lieutenant Cale Varon, sharp-eyed and restless, and Sergeant Lyra Demos, her hand on her halberd. Darren frowned. You see that? Kyle followed his gaze. Looks like a comet, sir. Lyra shaded her eyes. Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. That's no comet. The glimmer grew rapidly, a burning sphere of gold tearing through the clouds. The air itself began to vibrate, a deep, thrumming resonance that rattled their armor and made the marble beneath their boots tremble. Darren's eyes widened. By the gods, it's coming straight for us. The burning shape swelled, its outline now unmistakable, vast wings, a tail, a body wreathed in fire. Kyle's voice cracked. That's a dragon! Sound the alarm! Darren roared. The horn blast split the air, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the descending beast. Then the world exploded. A blinding flash of gold and white engulfed the upper reaches of the palace. The dragon struck the third tower with the force of a meteor. The impact ripped through the structure, stone, glass, and steel erupting outward in a storm of destruction. The shockwave hit first, a concussive blast that flattened banners and hurled guards from their posts. Then came the shattering of glass, hundreds of windows exploding in a single crystalline scream. Shards rained down like silver rain, slicing through the air as the upper floors of the tower disintegrated. Marble pillars cracked and burst apart, sending chunks of stone the size of carriages tumbling through the courtyards. The dragon's body plowed through the outer wall, carving a molten trench of ruin as it tore through the grand hall. Flaming debris and shards of metal shrapnel whirled through the air, embedding themselves in walls, armor, and flesh alike. The sound was deafening, a rolling, grinding roar of collapsing architecture and splintering timber that drowned out every scream. The dragon's momentum carried him through 3 levels of the palace, each one collapsing in a cascade of shattered marble and twisted beams. Chandeliers burst into showers of fire, tapestries ignited, and the once pristine corridors filled with choking dust and smoke. By the time the dragon struck the ground in the inner courtyard, the entire eastern wing of the palace was a ruin. Half the structure gutted, the rest trembling on the edge of collapse. The earth shook beneath the impact, sending cracks spiderwebbing through the flagstones. The air was thick with dust, the scent of scorched stone and burning silk filling every breath. Darren staggered to his feet, blood running down his forehead. Kyle! Lyra! Report! Cale coughed, his armor dented, his eyes wide. Half the wall's gone, sir. The whole east wing's— Gone, Lyra finished, her voice hoarse as she rested against the wall. A piece of steel protruded from her shoulder, and she was clearly in pain. Whatever that was, went straight through the palace, straight to the Emperor's quarters. The sound of collapsing stone echoed again, followed by the low, rumbling groan of something massive shifting in the wreckage. "Archers to the walls!" Kyle shouted. "We're under attack!" Bells rang, horns blared, and soldiers poured from every corridor, the air filled with the clang of steel and the shouts of command. "Protect the Emperor! Seal the gates! Form ranks!" Through the haze, the guards could barely make out the shape of the intruder. A massive golden form buried in rubble, smoke curling from cracks and holes. The ground trembled as it shifted slightly, a low growl rolling through the dust. No one dared move closer. To the soldiers of Valoria, it looked as though the heavens themselves had hurled a weapon straight into the heart of the Empire. And in the stunned silence that followed, Lyra whispered what they were all thinking. "The skies have turned against us."